Hey guys, it's Max. Welcome to my video on the brand new iMac Pro. So Apple just released the full spec sheet, the different configurations, all the prices for those. And this new machine is starting at, as we knew before, at $5,000, but it's going all the way up to $13,000, slightly over $13,000. So that's a big range of prices. And if you're somebody who this iMac Pro would work well for, you have the money, what configuration is actually worth purchasing? So maybe you can spend $8,000 or $10,000, but should you really? Are you going to get your return on investment? So I am going to be getting an iMac Pro in so that I could do all my testing, comparing it to the standard 2017 iMac that's maxed out, comparing it to some Windows computers, and maybe even a Hackintosh. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and enable those notifications so you guys don't miss out on that. But I've been looking at the spec sheet, I've been running some numbers, doing a little bit of research, and I have a good idea of what really is going to be the best bang for the buck. So not the cheapest or most expensive, what's actually the most worth it and is going to give you the most value for your money. Obviously, you're going to spend a lot of money already, but it is a pro machine with pro parts and a really, really nice display, plus a company that stands behind the actual machine itself, and you can extend your warranty as well. So this machine is going to sell well. I know it's already selling well. I know multiple people that have already ordered it, and there's people out there that have the money. They're making a lot of money with their video editing, their production, and they just want to get an easy solution that you put on your desk, plug in, and it's going to work and it's going to be quick, which is what this machine is designed to do. Now, you're watching a recording of a live streaming if you're watching this video in the future. Typically in our live streams, which I'm calling Max Talks Live, we have a little hangout before the video starts, before what you're watching, and then we're going to do a Q&A session about the topic, which you guys can see as well, and then after that we're going to do a random Q&A. So if you have a question from me about anything really, make sure you guys enable the notifications for these live videos. That way you'll get a pop-up on your phone or on your desktop. Next time I start doing one of these live questions, you can join in, hang out with us before, enjoy the topic, and then get your question answered. On top of that, if you guys have a super chat, which is basically like a contribution or a tip to creators like myself, all that money is going to go to a fund to buy Vadim and I lunch. So if you guys enjoy what we do, you guys want to buy us lunch, you guys could do so. And if you give enough to cover a lunch for both of us, you guys can tell us where you want us to go out for lunch, which we will do, and we will definitely enjoy it. So let's go ahead and start looking at this price sheet. You guys can see we have the page here on Apple's website. I'm going to look at the configurations from Apple's website, but I recommend ordering this thing from B&H. So in the video description, I have a set of links that you guys can check out. The reason why I would order from B&H is, one, you have a longer return policy. Two, you will not pay sales tax as long as you're outside of New York and New Jersey. So on a purchase this high, it is going to help. You still get the full warranty. Apple actually ships this machine to you. They're not shipping it to B&H. They typically drop ship right directly from Apple, and you could still add on Apple Care as well. So that's my recommendation. Plus, if you guys use those links, that helps out and funds this channel and all the time that goes into it. So here we have our standard configuration. We have an 8-core processor, 32 gigs of RAM, a terabyte of really, really fastest available SSD, Radeon Pro Vega graphics card with 8 gigs of RAM, 10 gigabit Ethernet, 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and of course that display for $5,000. We're going to go ahead and click configure. As you guys can see, it ships in 1 to 2 weeks right now if you're watching this live. So these are the specs that you can change. So they have these configurations. I'm going to skip those, and I will show you what I think is the best bang for the buck. I'm going to start out with the 8-core processor. I'm not going to go to the 10-core processor on here. And then I'm going to go to 64 gigabytes of RAM. And then I'm going to come down and we're going to add on the Radeon Vega 64 with 16 gigabytes of HBM2 memory. So that gives us a grand total of $6,399. We're $1,400 above the starting price, which isn't a huge difference if you're already spending that much money, but we're nowhere near, you know, if you start upgrading other stuff. So as you guys can see, I'm going to go in here, max it out, 128 gigs of RAM, 18-core processor, and we're at $13,200. So that's a huge amount of money. Now let's go ahead and switch back. Now, why would I recommend this configuration of $6,400? Well, let's start off with the first thing that you should upgrade, in my opinion. Actually, not even an upgrade. The first thing you should do is buy Apple Care. So what's really interesting about this new machine is Apple is charging the regular $169 rate to get 3 years of Apple Care on this product. That's interesting because even if you buy a base iMac, I think even one Vadim that costs the 21-inch base iMac as well, right? Any iMac, you're paying $169. So if you're buying iMac for $1,300 and you're paying that much money, that's a huge percentage of the standard price. Now you're buying a $5,000 machine up to $13,200 and you're paying $169. So I would undoubtedly do this. So usually Apple computers have pretty good reliability, really good resale, but if you do have an issue, it's going to be expensive to fix. I don't think anything's going to cost $169 to fix. You have a graphics card issue, it's probably going to cost $500, $600, $700. Any other issues are going to be
even the cheapest iMac for $1,000.
$1,000 iMac, you still pay $169 for that Apple Care. So if you don't do anything, just buy that Apple Care. If you buy it through B&H, you can still get the Apple Care. What you need to do is you need to just go to your Apple store within a month, or even give them a call right when you buy it new, and you can add that on. Okay, so the second option, if you're gonna do anything after you get the Apple Care, you need to upgrade the graphics card. So the base graphics card comes with 8 gigs of video memory, which is good. That's not going to be a limitation for most people, but the difference is the performance. So I ran the numbers on here. So it costs $600 to upgrade to the higher end graphics card that has double the memory, so 16 gigs of video memory, and you're probably not going to use more than 8, at least at this point, unless you're doing some heavy animation or really large projects with lots of effects. But what really matters is the OpenCL performance. So I looked at all the benchmarks for those graphics cards, and the graphics card that costs $600 more gets 50 to 70% higher OpenCL tests. So if you don't know what OpenCL is, that's the open source version kind of CUDA. So that's what Final Cut uses when you're going to be video editing. That's what DaVinci Resolve is going to use. That's what Premiere Pro is going to use. That's what a lot of other software like Photoshop, pretty much anything that's going to use your graphics card to accelerate what you're doing, it's using the OpenCL. So is it worth spending 12% more money, which is what the $600 comes out to, starting off from $5,000, paying 12% more money to get 50 to 70% more performance and not ever worrying about maxing out the video memory? So obviously I think it's definitely worth that. Now, the next thing that I would do after that point is I would upgrade your RAM. So it starts off with 32 gigabytes. Now, I want to say 32 gigabytes is enough for most people, especially if you're working on Mac OS. Their operating system utilizes the RAM better. So if you're using Windows, it uses up more RAM for the same kind of tests. And I did test that with Premiere Pro running on a Mac, on a PC, and just comparing how it works. So in Final Cut, I did not see a performance difference going higher than 32 gigabytes. And in Premiere Pro, I didn't see a difference either. Now, if you're doing some kind of After Effects or some programs that are really going to push your RAM, then obviously you're going to see a difference. But for Premiere Pro, for DaVinci Resolve, and for Final Cut, I did not see a difference between 32 and 64. Why would I buy it though? Well, the iMac Pro is sealed. There's no slots to access the RAM. I don't think Apple did this on purpose because they've kept the larger iMacs, they've kept slots in them to upgrade the RAM. So if they wanted to force you to spend more money, they would have done that previously. I think it's because of the new dual fans and the better cooling inside the iMac Pro. And I think they just weren't able to give it the best cooling possible in that small of a form factor and still make it have access to the RAM sticks. Plus, those RAM sticks, they're full-size RAM sticks, not the small ones on the other iMacs like our 2017 iMac. So I would spend the extra money right now, even though I hate paying Apple their inflated prices for RAM. If you're spending this much money already, you're going to own this computer for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 7, 8 years. Some people even keep them. It's worth spending the extra money because in the future, the programs are going to support more RAM, or if you're going to do heavier video editing, I would not want to buy a $5,000 system and be limited to 32 gigs of RAM. And then, yes, you could unglue the display from the computer, but you're going to avoid your warranty and risk some damage. So number 1, Apple Care. Number 2, graphics card. Number 3, RAM, in that order depending on your budget. Number 4 is if you have the money, and I already did recommend this to Ray Roman, he sent me a message, to do the 10-core processor. I think above 10 cores, unless you know that your video editing program or your whatever program you're using really makes use of all those cores, I would not upgrade. So I did the math on the 10 core. The most performance improvement you're gonna get is 12% faster performance over the 8 core. The way you could do this is you could take their clock speeds, you can multiply them by how much cores you have, and it's gonna give you like the rough number. So you're gonna get the most 12% more performance with the 10 core, and you're gonna pay, let me say that again. Let me say that a little bit better. Okay, so you're gonna get the most 17% faster performance for 14% more money. So it's still, the performance is outweighing the price difference. So it's not a bad investment, but you got to keep in mind that's the most, is a maximum of 17%. Programs that are not going to utilize all 10 cores, it's going to most likely run slower because the base clock is slower on there. Now, I personally don't think it's worth it, but if you have the money, you can go for that. One thing I do have to point out, and this is very interesting on the spec sheet, the 10 core actually turbo boosts higher than any other cores or any other CPUs. Typically, the lower the core count, the higher it's going to boost. So this is weird with these processors, why that 10 core is at 4.5. Maybe Apple is just trying to push people to buy that more. I honestly don't have an answer for you. But what I do know is you can't just go off of that 4.5 gigahertz turbo boost. Because what happens is that highest number could be only if your program is using 1 core or 2 cores. So if your program is using 4 cores, it could run at 4.2. And if your program is using 6 cores, it could run at 4.0. If you're using all 10 cores, it could run at, let's say, for example, 3.7. And I'm going to be doing some testing, and I'll talk about this in the full review. So even though the 8 core has a lower max turbo boost, most likely it's going to run at the same clock speed when you're maxing out the cores when you're video editing, or even slightly higher than the 10 core. So if you have the cash, you don't mind dropping it. It's not a bad investment to go to 10 core, but I would not go, wouldn't go above that. The reason why is the base clock speed is much lower. You're spending way more money, and most video editing programs are you're not gonna see a difference there. Unless you're doing some kind of heavy animation, 3D rendering stuff. In that case, you already know what you need to get. And most likely you're not gonna be buying an iMac for that, honestly. I think this is really for a lot of video editors. And the last thing I want to say is the SSD is not really worth upgrading. These are incredibly fast SSDs, same ones that are in, like the iMacs, super, super fast, but they're very, very expensive to upgrade. And if you're doing a lot of video editing, most likely even 4 terabytes is not going to be enough for you. Maybe you can work on a project on your desktop and then archive it, but a lot of the guys that have the money to get a system like this that are doing a ton of video editing, kind of like what we're doing, they have RAID. So you have a Thunderbolt RAID, or you have a server or something like that. So most likely you're not going to be able to just use the internal drive. You're going to have to use other drives anyways. In that case, you're throwing away a lot of money. So that is my recommendation, guys. I have the link to it to B&H in the video description. If you guys buy through that helps support the channel. And now we're going to switch over to Q&A. So we're going to do a regular session of Q&A. I'm going to answer questions just about the iMac Pro or other video editing computers. And then after that, we're going to wrap up the video that's published on the channel, and then I'm going to do a live Q&A session. So if you want to join in on the live Q&As and you're watching this at a later time, make sure you guys enable those notifications. That way, if you have a question, I will go ahead and answer that for you. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. All right, everybody that is here. I don't know how much of you guys are here since I closed the page there to not get distracted. What are we at, Vadim?
What are you talking about? What are we at, what?
98 people.
Yeah, 90 something.
What's up, guys? Feels kind of interesting to do like a regular video, but live, and then switch over. I don't feel as comfortable anymore. So what do you guys think? How did I present that? Let me get some of your guys' live feedback. What are your guys' opinions on...
Hardware connects.
Dimitri, what's up, man? Привет. Too fast over the options. Okay, Jace. Thank you for letting me know. So we will be getting an iMac Pro in basically right at launch, December 26th or 27th, I believe. Jace Anderson is asking, he's saying I went over the options too fast. Check the link in the video description. I actually have the exact one that I personally would buy. Dimitri, so the one I'm getting in is not, I didn't pay for it. This is going to be a review computer. Basically, it's not from Apple. So we create videos for Apple Insider, which is a website that's been around for about 20 years or so. And so they did go ahead and order one in, and it'll be shipped here since we do all their video editing and all their video production. We're going to be doing the full written review that's going to go on the website along with the review for their channel. But along with that, I'm going to be comparing it to my fully spec'd out 5K 2017 iMac, and probably some Windows computers and stuff like that. Okay, so just as a reminder for the 88 of you guys that are here, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, hit that. Dad's watching? Dad, happy birthday, Dad. So everybody that's on here, dinner on me. Dad, it's your birthday and you have to pay for it. We should be paying for it. So Yuri right there is my dad. It is his 50th birthday today, and we'll be celebrating a little bit later. Thank you, Dad, for joining. So those of you guys who want to do a super chat, if you guys want to guarantee your question is answered, you guys could do that. That it goes into a lunch fund for Vadim and I. If you put in enough to pay for a full lunch for us, you can let us know where you guys want us to go. Yes, Dylan, my dad is very young, and I'm glad. Okay, J-Rock is asking, will the base model do well for 4K Premiere footage? J-Rock, honestly, I probably wouldn't buy a 5K iMac Pro for Premiere Pro, personally. If you have the money and the money doesn't matter that much to you, it's going to be a good machine. But I would hold off. So what we're going to be testing the iMac Pro. I'm going to be testing in Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and Final Cut. I think the guys who use Final Cut are really excited about this machine because it's a lot more powerful than what we had before. But for Premiere Pro, I would just hold off and see how it compares to some of the other builds, and especially see how it compares to the regular iMac that's going to come in around $3,000 for a fully spec'd out model. So if you do buy it, I would say don't go for the 10 core. But do go for that higher graphics card. Definitely go for that higher end graphics card. Alan is mentioning that there was no notification for the stream. That is really weird, Alan. I'm not sure why. Maybe something with the setup. We messed around a lot with the streaming options. This is our first time using OBS, using the brand new camera for streaming, which is linked in the video description below. This higher end setup. So I'm honestly not sure why you guys didn't get a notification. That would explain why we don't have that much people watching live. We typically have a lot more. Lover Tech is saying Premiere Pro loves high clock speeds. Yes, definitely. It definitely does. What I'm really excited about, honestly, is not just the iMac Pro. I'm excited for Apple to update the regular iMac Pro to the 8700K, which I just did a build on. If you guys go to the channel after this video, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out my best bang for the buck PC video editing computer. It's roughly right now 1500-ish, maybe a little bit lower than that, but the prices right now on parts are inflated. Maybe in about a month or so it'll be $1,100, $1,200. But when Apple updates the CPU with that 8700K, it's going to go from a 4-core to a 6-core and with higher clock speeds. Hopefully they put in the better cooling from the iMac Pro in there. So that's what I really am looking forward to.
Max, someone had a question. How do you get started with Apple Insider?
Okay. Chris Tutt, you don't have to super chat, but if you enjoy our content, you've been around for, some of you guys have been around for 3.5, almost 4 years now. You enjoy what we do. It's just your way of saying thank you and tipping. So the option is there. Some people enjoy it. You obviously don't have to, and we're answering a lot of questions here. So I'm gonna focus on these iMac Pro questions, and then a little bit we'll switch over to other questions. So if you have a question about the iMac Pro or video editing computers in general, we're going to focus on that and hold on for other stuff. Okay, so let's see who was asking a question about QuickSync here. So OMC Video Photography asked, does the new CPU have QuickSync for fast H.264/5 encoding? So it does not have QuickSync, and this was a problem with the Mac Pro, where it was fast for video editing, but it was about 3 times slower than an iMac for encoding H.264 files. Obviously, you know about that, you're mentioning it. Now, what's interesting is on the iMac Pro webpage, they put out some statistics, and this was after it was already launched for order, maybe just about an hour or two ago. And there they talk about exporting to HEVC, and they mention that it's 3 times faster than using the Intel's encoder, which is built into like the iMacs inside the graphics chip, basically QuickSync. And it's 3 times faster, but they're using the encoder that is inside those AMD graphics cards. So that's specifically for HEVC. I think that's going to be the future for exporting. YouTube is now finally supporting HEVC. So we're going to have a video comparing MP4 versus HEVC for exports, like the speeds and also the quality once the file is online. So I am hoping that they're not only using those AMD graphics cards for the HEVC, H.265 encoding, but also MP4 H.264 encoding, because you're right, that would really suck to have a computer that edits really, really well, but when it's time to export, you're going to be sitting around for a very long time, especially in Final Cut, where that's a key advantage over Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. And we have here another super chat by Matthew Melton. Once again, thank you, Matthew. 16K footage. So like 8K by 4 would be like 32K. Yes, so Matthew, we are going to have some comparisons with that Threadripper build that I did, the 16 core 32 thread Threadripper, which basically if you add in a nice display is going to be similar price point, but obviously you have twice as many cores and a better graphics card at the same time and more RAM. So actually it's cheaper if you look at it that way. So yeah, we're gonna push these tests to the limit. So I think you're gonna be happy with that. Linus Stripper. Yeah, I need to rename that rename that video. Lover of Tech is saying he uses a 4790K on Windows at 4.5 gigahertz and 32 gigs of RAM with a GTX 1080 and Premiere Pro. 4K 15-minute video with correction LUTs take 45 to 50 minutes to export. Anything I could do to improve it? So that sounds about right, honestly. Premiere Pro does not make use of QuickSync, even if your computer has it. People have been complaining and asking about it for years. There's really no limitation to it. And Premiere Pro is just not putting it out there. The one limitation is you can't do multi encoding, so like 2-pass encoding. I don't do that anyways because I don't want to sit around and do that. It takes forever. I just do a single pass or like a constant bit rate. So I wish they would add it. It would free up some of that CPU for actually processing. So what basically happens when you're encoding is you have the QuickSync chip, you have the CPU, the QuickSync chip, and the graphics card. So the graphics card is doing all the decoding of the actual video footage and doing some processing for effects. And then you have the graphics card that's helping process any effects, any color corrections, accelerating that. And then you have the QuickSync chip, which is encoding, making the actual file. So if the CPU has to do all the processing, sending everything to the graphics card and pulling it back after that, and has to encode it, it's a lot more taxed and it's going a lot slower. But when you break it up, you have your CPU for decoding and processing, graphics for all the effects, and the QuickSync chip to export. Everything goes way faster. but Premiere is not making that available. Okay, so I'm going to go through some more questions here. So if you guys have a question specifically about the iMac Pro or video editing computers, then go ahead and ask. Alan is saying, will the 5K iMac display become obsolete? The current model isn't capable of HDR. That is a really good point. I think you mentioned that in the last stream when you were joining in there. So honestly, I really don't have an answer for you. I haven't messed with HDR a whole lot. I'm going to be looking at it more, and I'm going to look into that question. So I'm going to save that, and I'll talk about that in the full review. Thank you for asking that. Okay, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. So if you guys want to make it a little bit easier, if you guys have a question, tag my name in it so it's going to come up. That will be a little better. Reverb. Roderick is asking, is it true that Apple chose good CPU with silicon for their PCs? I doubt they have a choice on what specific chips they're using. I think Intel just ships them or ships the manufacturer a box of chips. So I think that's the case with different iMacs, because I did a study for like overheating on the iMacs, thermal throttling to be more specific, and some of them don't have thermal throttling, some of them do have thermal throttling. That could be just how efficient the CPU is, because there's differences in chips. Some will overclock faster because they put out less heat. It could also have to do with how they put the thermal paste or whatever. Matthew, how come the DVR is off? I'm just trying it. I think I'm trying it with it off to have the least latency. Sometimes I'll ask a question to the audience and it'll be 10-15 seconds before I get to hear any answers. So if that is an issue, then you know what, I might just, for next time, I'll choose the next option. So the more latency, if you want the least amount of latency, you have to turn it off. They kind of force you to do so. See, right now you answered back. I was able to check out your question really quickly. Alan is asking, do you really need ECC RAM for video editing? Will Final Cut crash less? No, you don't need ECC. So ECC is error correction memory. If there's some error, you're not going to have a crash. It's just going to do the process over, as far as my understanding. Most workstation computers use that, and I think the Xeon processors require ECC memory, as far as I know, and that's why all these workstation computers have it. Now, ECC memory costs a lot more money, but no, for video editing, you really don't need it. Most of the crashes are just because of software issues. Final Cut's not horrible. Premiere has a lot more bugs and crashes, but that's not going to help you at all, honestly. So Roderick is asking, does the cheapest i5 Mac, is that good enough for 1440p editing in Final Cut? Yes, it is. If you're using Final Cut, it's going to do a good job. So yeah, go for it. All right, guys, so let's do, if there's any more questions on the iMac Pro or other video editing related questions, go ahead and ask, and then we're going to switch over to the full Q&A with any questions that you guys have. And that's going to be only for the audience who watches live. So if you're watching this later and you want to get your question answered and you want to join us for the Hangouts before the videos that get cut out and the Q&As afterwards, make sure you guys enable those notifications. Once again, in the video description, I have the links to my recommendation for the iMac Pro, the full list of iMac Pros where you can buy them tax-free, and also the brand new camera that I'm using to record this video if you guys are enjoying the quality. OMC Video Photography is asking, adding an external Vega card to a 2017 iMac will give it similar performance as the 8-core iMac Pro. I don't think it will. So I haven't connected the Vega 64. I had a Vega Frontier in the Threadripper build, and I actually did use it in an external GPU to a MacBook Pro, but in reality, it's not really going to help. The way most video editing works is you have your CPU and you have your graphics card. So if the CPU can't send data fast enough, if that's the bottleneck, it can't send data fast enough to the graphics card isn't going to be able to process it. So what you see a lot of times, you see somebody buy a 4-core Intel processor, and then they go out and buy a 1080 Ti, or they go out and buy a Titan. And if you're not watching your performance, the numbers, the graphics card load, the CPU load, you're editing video and may not even notice. You think everything's going great, and people recommend that, which is not the right thing to do. So I've done so much testing, and basically what happens if you just buy a really nice graphics card, but the CPU is the bottleneck, it's not capable of sending enough data, you're going to be maxing out your CPU, but only using your graphics card at like 20-30%. So what's the point of buying a $1,000 graphics card if you could have bought a graphics card for $300 and had the same exact, literally the same exact performance for video editing, but spending way less money? So if you have an iMac and you plug in a Vega GPU, you might notice a small difference depending on if the CPU is a bottleneck or not. Most likely you're not going to notice a difference because the CPU is the bottleneck. So I really, in all my video editing computer builds, I like to test out multiple graphics cards, and I have a really good feel for what graphics cards go well after doing this for about 3 years now. And typically you want to have a good pairing. You want it to be balanced. The CPU is fast performance and with a balanced graphics card, or else you're just wasting money. Ostrander says he has a high-spec 2017 iMac. Should he look at the iMac Pro? Well, I'm going to be comparing it to the high-spec 2017 iMac, so stay tuned for that video. I'll let you know how big of a difference it is and if you should upgrade. All right, guys, I'm going to see if there's any more questions about the iMac Pro. Okay, and we will be switching over there. So Matthew is asking, is there any benefit to using ECC memory on a regular basis? He's planning a build, and he wants to know if it helps. No. There's really no benefit of using ECC memory for video editing specifically. If you're doing some high-end calculations, some mathematical stuff for research and some of those really crazy scientific calculations that they do, yes, you should use ECC because you don't want any errors in that. But for video editing, no. If you have crashes, it's most likely software issues. Now, on the other hand, you're saying you're going to use two Vega FE liquid-cooled graphics cards. If you're using Premiere Pro, go with a 1080 Ti instead, or a higher graphics card, and most likely just one, because two graphics cards most likely aren't going to make a big difference. Now, if you're using DaVinci Resolve, then do go with a Vega. But I would take a look at just getting one of them, not two of them. You can get a Vega FE liquid cooled because it has a 16 gigs of video memory, but most likely you're only going to make use of one of them unless you're using DaVinci Resolve for specific tasks that use just GPU render, and then it'll be able to make use of it. So dual graphics cards are really not worth it bang for the buck wise unless you have a lot of extra money. And Roderick, last question is going to be yours. You're asking if we could use Prime 95 and Firmark at the same time to see the temps. Yes, we will be testing thermal throttling or overheating on the iMac Pro. Obviously, they're packing a ton of hardware into a computer the same size of an iMac, and we know the regular iMac's already thermal throttle. Not very much, not a significant amount, at least the 2017 models, but that is going to be tested. So thank you guys for joining us, the guys who are watching this video at a later point in time. Once again, we have all the links and information in the video description. Go and check that out. And if you want to join us live next time, enable those notifications. After this point, we're going to do a Q&A session on any other topics that people want to ask about. So if you have a question you want answered, make sure to join us live for a hangout at the beginning and your questions answered at the end. This has been Max, and I will see you guys in the next video.